Hi there, today we're going to be building a house for the 3 different stages of your world's progression. Obviously starting with the starter house, so let's just clear out a small area over here to build in, and we can just about get started. A few things to note for the starter house: I can only use cobble and 1 wood type along with the other most basic things. It also has to include a bedroom, storage, a farm, and just your general utility blocks. So I've got a little bit of an idea for the way I want to build the house. I just want to plan it out onto the ground real quick. Okay, this is the general layout we're going to start with. All of these corner blocks are going to have logs. Now, I was actually thinking it would be pretty cool if we use oak planks just for the bottom part of the house's foundation. Just like that. And then we can use stone for the foundation. I realize this is probably the wrong way around, but I'm hoping that it's going to make sense in a few minutes time. Okay, nice. The foundation's been complete, and since this is the starter house, we only have access to 1 wood type, which means I'm going to be using just normal oak logs for these outer areas. These areas are basically going to form a little bit of a frame around the house. And then I realize it's still a little bit expensive, but it is still oak wood, so I mean, we're technically sticking by the rules here. So I'm just going to use a few stripped logs to build up a wall. And this is a little bit higher than what I would usually go. I think this is all up until 5, but I think I'm going to lower this part to 4. And then I could create a little bit of a separation in between these areas here to kind of make it look like there's different rooms going through there. Then I'd like to raise this area up by at least another 2 or 3 blocks. Alright, now that area has been raised up by another 3 blocks. And I reckon what I'm going to start doing right now is I'm going to start working on a little bit of a frame around the house. I do that by basically just using normal oak logs in all of these kind of like corner sections that I marked out earlier, and I'm just going to take them up to that general level. However, I am starting to realize this column probably should be in this block, so I can just destroy the old one. Okay, I realize I probably found a little bit of a loophole in this challenge with all this wood, but it's going to look pretty nice, alright? And it's definitely going to be a possible starter house to build because you don't need any fancy tools. You're just going to need to grind out a few oak trees. I'm actually wondering if I should put a frame up there. You know what, we're going to do it just to keep with the style. I can always remove it later if I'd like to. And just like that, all the frames have been put in place, but you know what I'm going to do over here? I'm quickly going to come in and I'm going to just cover this section with oak planks. We'd actually be able to build an attic in this area, and then I might even try to include an attic in the roof. So this floor that we're building over here is actually going to be the roof. Now it's a little bit dark in here, but if I grab a few torches, I can quickly lay out a few torches here just to allow you to see a little bit better. Now I realize this interior is a lot higher than I would usually make it, but that's done with purpose. I kind of wanted to make it a little bit different by allowing for a bit more room inside. That way I could make a little bit of a cozier interior. Can I get, okay, there we go. Yeah, cozier interior as I was saying. However, this door over here is bothering me a little bit. I think I'm going to center it from the outside instead, and then I'm going to do a similar thing over here. Now we have 2 entrances, and I can make it look better by putting a cobblestone on the ground, a stair over here with a door in there, and obviously repeating it on this side as well. And just like that, we have our entrances kind of just organized. Now, just because we're limited to... oh, well, is my piggy going into the house? No. Now, just because we've been limited to oak wood doesn't mean we can't make any cool details. I mean, we still have oak stairs, trapdoors, and slabs, so let me see how it's going to look if I add a few of those things in here to make a little bit of an arch. I might even extend a few stairs out here just to make the wall columns look a little bit more reinforced. I don't like it on this section, but I might just leave it on there. That seems like that could work. And in this area over here, I could just cover with trapdoors. This way it looks like there's a little bit of a planter. Now I need to be very careful not to use plants here that I can acquire only with Silk Touch. So I'm going to keep it simple with a few poppies and a dandelion. Now, the unfortunate thing about this whole setup is I don't have glass. Well, I can't use glass, so I think I'm just going to build a little bit of a window here with fences. And then I could grab a slab, put that there with a few trapdoors on each side. I can also just slap a few torches in around here to add some light. And I'm not entirely a fan of this, what we've got going here. I think that looks a little bit better. I'm not entirely sure though, but maybe it needs a few trapdoors just around the bottom of these columns. Yeah, you know what I mean? If I zoom out like this, it definitely doesn't look too bad, but I won't bore you with the details. Let me just finish them quick and then I'll show you them afterwards. Whoosh. And just like that, all of the wall details at least have been done for the most part. So I just repeated this exact detail kind of on these walls as well. I just readjusted them to make sure they fit in properly. And at the back here, I actually decided to include a little bit of a wheat farm, just using a few basic stairs. And then obviously I put a stair with some water in there and included a bit of basic storage above it. I added a small little plant planter detail at this window over here. And I incorporated a whole nother farm over here with a storage system of its own as well. There are loads of torches all around here, which should hopefully prevent any sort of mobs from spawning close by here. And now all that's really left to do outside here is to sort this area out. Now, before I detail these walls, I kind of want to get a feeling for how the roof system or structure is going to look here. But I do have a feeling for something we can do on the floor so long. I like the idea of having a little bit of a path coming out here. I think that's looking pretty nice. And then we could sneak in a little bit of water under these walls. I'm just putting a water in there with a slab and then a grass block in front of it. And then I should be able to till up all this ground, and then we could have even more farm space in front. This is fantastic because if you remember, one of the requirements for this house is that we need to have farm space. But you know what, for the meantime, I think I can include a little bit of a frame over here, and then I'll probably want to include a torch on both sides of the door, just like that. And I think I'm going to repeat that at the top here as well. I don't really see what I would do here that would make it so that I don't want to do that. And with this part over here, I think I'm actually going to include a little bit of a window just from the house into the attic. I think that's going to be pretty nice. And then I always like putting a bit of a window above the doors if I can. I think it looks pretty cool. Also, apparently a villager from that village over there just decided to move in. And taking a peek at this from far, it definitely doesn't look too bad. It's crazy to think we're doing all of this just with basic resources. Oh, I didn't open the door. Just with basic resources. But anyway, we can get started on the interior here, and I'm just going to get started by placing a few stairs over here to add like a nice transition there. But I won't bore you with the rest of the interior. I'm just going to get to work, and then I'll give you a little bit of a tour afterwards. Yeah, what was a second for you felt like an eternity for me. Let me quickly show you what's going on inside here. So I was sure to include a little bit more storage because, let's be honest, you can never really get enough. Furthermore, I included a small utility section here. Since this is a starter house, I figured this is probably going to be enough smelting capacity. Nonetheless, as you've seen, there's a small storage area here. Also, another villager seems to have moved in, so yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if there's space in here for you anymore. And over here is the cozy little bedroom. I know it doesn't look like much, but please just remember, these are the absolute bare necessities. We don't really have a large variety of blocks we can use. And how could I forget about this? This is the ladder leading us up to this attic over here. And if we make a plan over here, we can allow this ladder to take us up to this attic. Ooh, that could be pretty nice. Alright, it's coming together nicely. I reckon we start working on the roof. And you already know I'm going for a classic roof frame here. I'm going to be using cobblestone for like the outline of it. And I think I'm going to go with 2 rotations of stairs. Then I'm going to slap in a block over here. And I'll bring in another 2 rotations of stairs. That takes me almost to the center. And then I'll just repeat it on this side as well. Never mind, the third one was actually 3 rotations of stairs. My bad. But with all of those rotations in place, I'm going to put an upside down stair here. Wrap around, put one facing this way. And do that again. And then add a few slabs on top, and that gives us a little bit of like a overhang. Now this roof does feel a little bit large for the house, but I think it's gonna work, especially when I come and fill it in with some more stripped oak. Yeah, see, that doesn't look half bad. Now something I think I'm still gonna have to do is add a little bit of a window in here, just with a fence, and then I can put torches on both sides, along with maybe another stair over here and a few slabs, maybe trapdoors as well. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm gonna let it marinate in my brain while I build the other part. Okay, I think I may have figured it out. I think this thing is not supposed to be here. I think instead we can build it over there with a stair, and then we can also place a few trapdoors over there, and then we can place a few trapdoors here. The important thing is that there's something there that just allows for a little bit of a break between the logs. And now I can quickly just fill it in, which looks like this when it's done. Keep in mind again, it does look incredibly bland, but it's just one wood type, so I really don't think it's come out looking too bad. Now if we come inside here and climb up this ladder, there's a nice massive attic up here which we can fill with whatever we need. I'm not necessarily going to fill it with anything right now because, well, we've included everything that this stage requires us to. So I guess this attic would be more for just expanding later in your world if you need to. However, we do still have another roof here that we need to build, and I'm thinking about making it a little bit more unique, a little bit different. So I'm thinking about adding like a different kind of a roof overhang here. I think this shape might actually work. Let me just repeat it on the other side quick. It's definitely not too complicated. Then I can just connect it all together over here, and then I can just use some oak slabs to fill it all in. And it's occurring to me right now, there's an obvious issue right here, which means this area is going to be so small, probably won't be able to use it as an attic, but that's okay. And now that's how that little section of roof is looking. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but surely after I add a few stripped logs in here, it can start looking a little bit better. I think I'm going to do like a makeshift arch there just to add a little bit more detail. And then what I'm thinking thinking about doing here is adding a little bit of variety in this roof by adding a few like extra slabs here and there. I feel like that's pretty cool. I'm also wondering, what if I actually try to connect this to that roof and just really make it look like a cool extra addition? Yeah, I think that was the important part. It looks quite a bit better with that connected. And I need to be honest with you, in Minecraft, I'm a little bit more of a carrot guy when it comes to the aesthetics. The green looks a lot better than this white or gray or yellow. I guess wheat's yellow, right? Now we can probably finish this off nicely by just slapping a few paths in here and there to make it look like somebody's been moving around here. Ideally, I'd like to be using coarse dirt, but I'm not going to use that in the starter house yet. Ooh, also it might look cool if I just place like a few oak trapdoors all around here. Maybe in the middle there. Yeah, okay, those oak trapdoors are actually adding, I like the detail they're adding. I do, however, realize that's probably not everybody's cup of tea. I did not know villagers could climb ladders. What is this? Dude, why are you up there? And why do you look so terrified? It's freaking out. Oh, that was fun. He was doing the little wiggle. Okay, I'm wondering how it's going to look if I just sprinkle in a few oak planks around here. I don't want to try to get too fancy with texture, but I think it could look pretty nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to do a little bit more of this all around. And I think that's good enough. This is definitely not a bad little cozy starter house, especially considering we're using basic materials. Right, but with this house out the way, how about we get started on the mid house? Alright, time for the mid house in a brand new world, and basically the rules are we can now use any stone, any wood, lanterns, glass, campfires, but no nether items. The house will however need all of the previous stuff, except we have to include a enchanter as well as a mine. So just like last time, I'm just trying to clear out a small space to build in, and it looks like I'm gonna have to do a little bit of terraforming as well. Okay, you know what, this should be a decent place to start with, and can I just say, it feels a lot better having a larger variety of materials to be working with. Now, believe it or not, the floor plan I'm thinking about here is going to be a little bit more basic, but I'm hoping that just the sheer detail of the house and the, I guess, slightly bigger scale in terms of the verticality of it will kind of make it a little bit more special than the starter one. We're starting with 7 blocks across, and I'm thinking 11 blocks long. Never mind, I changed my mind, it's 13 blocks across. And now, because we have access to any kind of stone type, that means we can use deep slate for the walls, and I'm going to be using spruce for this floor. Now, I'm wondering just how high I should make this. I definitely do want to make it quite high, and I'm thinking 7 blocks high should be a decent start. Now I should be able to come through here with just a little bit of polished deep slate, or maybe some deep slate bricks. I'm not sure which one I prefer. In all honesty, I don't really prefer any of these when it comes to detailing this. Maybe we keep the texturing simple and just go with cobbled deep slate. However, we should be able to make that work because I'd like to create a little bit of a ring around this base. And I think a 5-3-2-1 pattern over here should get a pretty decent job done. And if I got the pattern right here, it should link up, which it did. Okay, that's a perfect circle all around here, kind of. Now I'm just going to fill this entire level up with grass just to kind of give this entire place an elevation of 1 block. Just like so. I realize it probably looks a little bit weird right now, but just trust the process. Now I'm going to come around here and I'm going to make these 3 block stairs because we're going to need a way up. And every here and there, I'm just going to incorporate a few more stairs scattered throughout here. And I'm not sure if you've put it together just yet, but this is actually going to be the path leading to the house. And what's nice about this now is that there's a slight drop into the house as well. It just makes it feel a little bit more cozy. However, actually, hold on. I had a little bit of a thought. We could do something here to make the house feel even more cozy. And that's just to place a few trapdoors on the inside, flick them up like this, break these, turn around, place a door here. Ooh, okay, now I think I need to add a few stairs here. And then we should be left with something like this, where if we break these blocks, get a few cobbled deep slate stairs, we can do this, and pop a lantern in the middle. Now we have a cozy little entrance for the house. We can take this a little bit further by adding a few barrels on the outside, and I always love slapping a few leaves around on the outside here just like this, which we can act like they're being contained with spruce fences. Furthermore, I'm not going to do too much over here yet, because we still need to build the top part, and that's going to add a lot of detail to the build as well. However, what we can do really quick is place a stair facing this way so that the water that we put in there doesn't go into the house, and then this will allow us to actually have water for the farm. And I don't know if you realize just yet, but yes, this entire circle is going to be a farm. And if there's ever an area like this where the water doesn't reach, I'm just going to put a water source with a spruce slab on top of there. Then I'm going to come over here, grab a lantern, and I can put that over here, and that'll actually give light to the farm so that the crops can keep growing during the night. And if we wanted to make this farm colorful, we could give it an alternating pattern with wheat seeds and carrots. That allows for that white yellowy look from the wheat along with a green from the carrot, which when it's done looks something like this, and I like that quite a lot. Doesn't that look nice? Not to mention it feels incredibly cozy running up here and then going down into your house. Kind of makes me feel a little bit safer. But now I'm going to fill in the roof so that we can get started with another level. And the first thing we need to do when we get started on the second level is, well, I want to add a little bit of a spruce stair and slab trim around here. That'll allow me to actually go and build the columns on this outer block, which means there's going to be a lot more space inside here. So yeah, basically the game plan is just to do this all around. Now for the second level, what I think I'm going to do here is build these columns at least about 7 blocks high. I realize that's quite tall, but remember the first foundation was also 7 blocks tall. And I think I'm going to be dividing these sections up like this. I'll be building another column in this corner, and then I'll be dividing this section up in half as well. So basically I'm putting columns in the corners and I'm dividing each section up with one in the middle as well. And then I'll obviously also be connecting them at the top just like this, but I'll also be sure to sprinkle in a few stripped spruce logs just because they kind of, honestly, they complement the oak color well and they add a nice texture to the whole build. And I also just realized another thing I really love doing is placing a barrel in all of these bottom blocks of the columns. It's just another one of those tricks to add a little bit more detail and texture to the build. And now, because all overworld stone types are available for us to use, I'm going to actually be using diorite to build this entire inner wall frame all the way up to, basically all the way up to the top here, which should look something like that when I'm done. However, the top here does now look a little bit bland. See, the bottom's fine because we can do a whole bunch of stuff here to kind of have it blend in, but I do like the idea of adding just subtle texture into the diorite with a little bit of calcite. There we go. Now that feels a lot better. Now I reckon in terms of the detailing, we're just gonna eat this elephant one bite at a time, and I think that means I just want to start with a few like trapdoors and stairs to give the thing a little bit of an arch, a little bit of a frame, which looks something like that when it's done. Then thankfully we can actually use glass for a few windows again. Not gonna lie, I really prefer glass over fences because that can now allow me to put a few stairs in over here. Now I realize that doesn't look like much, but once we put a few campfires in the top here, extinguish them with a shovel, add a spruce trapdoor right next to them with a spruce fence gate that's been opened, it looks like a little bit of a support for this little overhang. Actually, hold on, you know what we can actually do here? Instead of the spruce support, we can put a few oak trap doors which make it look like we're incorporating those window door things. I can't remember what they're called. But nonetheless, we can place a lantern on top of here and add a flower pot with like a torch flower. I don't know. Suddenly that looks very nice. However, something we can still do is just spam a few leaves around here just to make it look like, I don't know, you have a fancy planter. And obviously we'll also need to use a few spruce signs here just to add a little bit of a container for the leaves. And you know what? That's the first wall done and detailed and it looks fantastic. Just like in the starter house, I'm going to do the other walls real quick and then I'll show you what I came up with. Window shutters. The word I was looking for earlier was window shutters. I realized that's quite a random thing to bring up now. But anyway, I've completed the walls on the other sides and I didn't want to copy this design exactly everywhere. So basically what I did on the side here was I did like a smaller version of it, but I also added an arch at the bottom. I'm actually also realizing it could be a cool little bit of detail to add a few fences on here as well. I get distracted so easily. Anyway, the back area here is similar to the front. I just, instead of having the leaves here, I decided to make an arch. And this side is the same as that other side. Now, this bottom section has been bothering me a little bit. I just want to see if I can actually use some tuff to add texture to it. Yeah, I think that's a little bit heavy on the tuff there. Yeah, no, I don't think tuff's the block. I'll find the right block one day. But before I get distracted again, I like doing a few of the biggest, bulkiest things all first, just so that I can kind of get like the rough outline of the build going. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the next thing I'm going to be doing is just building kind of like the rough shape for the roof. And the main roof part for the most part is actually going to be quite simple. We're going to start with a slab over here. I'm thinking about placing a block after that, which I can then place a stair on top of. I just want to break this block. And then I'm going to place another block over there, which I'll make 2 blocks tall. And then I'll make this one 3 blocks tall. I kind of like that arching shape. Now let me just repeat it on the other side. And once we get to the middle here, I think I'm just going to make this 2 blocks tall with a little bit of a stripped spruce log at the top here, which will make sense later. Now I feel like an important part of this is the spruce fences over here, which we can open. That's important because when there's not a block in between here connecting these together, the spruce fences help give it that little bit of connected shape. And I'm not going to get too fancy with like too many different kinds of colors in this build, so I'm just going to fill this gap in over here with some more more bird poop, and then I'm going to texture it with a little bit of calcite, just like that. However, I made one critical error. Hold on. You see, what I actually needed to do was extend this frame up with obviously some oak logs spread in here as well, and then I actually needed to build this bird poop structure behind this frame to give it that kind of a look. Now there's a step there which adds a little bit more depth. However, what we can still do is come in here and just add another stair with another trapdoor, open up that fence gate because I accidentally closed it, repeat it on the other side. Yeah, I should have done this before I put the fence gates. Then place a trapdoor in the middle here and line this entire area with spruce signs and basically go with like a block gap in between each spruce sign going up as well, just to give it that area a little bit more texture. Now, something we still need to do here is add a few trapdoors on this top part over here, add a spruce fence gate on the edge there, grindstone underneath here, and hang a lantern from that grindstone. Now we just need to repeat this on the other side. All right, cool. Now we've got a really good shape to work from. There's one more issue, and that's obviously these gaps here, but don't worry, those gaps are going to be filled in when we fill in the roof, which just so happens to be the next step. And unlike in the previous design, I don't think I'm going to be bringing this part of the roof frame through with a dark oak. At least I'm going to be using the filling of the roof all the way from the bottom here. And as you can see, I'm using tiled deep slate. Now, the reason I was particularly keen on using tiled deep slate is because when you add a little bit of texture with polished deep slate, whatever the block variety like slab or block or stair, you can end up with a really nice textured roof, even if you just place the blocks somewhat at random. But anyway, now that the roof's been filled in, there is one more thing we need to do here real quick. Well, there's actually quite a few more things we need to do, but basically the first thing we need to do of the new set of things is build this top detail. Now I think I'm going to leave a 3-block gap. What happens if I leave a 3-block gap going all throughout your, hold on. Okay, if I leave a 3-block gap between each one of these spruce trapdoor details, the balance works out perfectly fine. Then all we need to do is between all of these spruce trap details, we just need to spam a whole bunch of spruce signs in, which should ultimately give us a very nice rooftop detail like that. Not gonna lie, that actually looks pretty nice. However, I can't quite help but think that this feels a little bit bland. So I'm gonna come right here in the center of the house, and then I'm just going to break 3 by 3 blocks of space out over here, and I'm going to build this weird kind of platform. Actually, no, you know what? I'm gonna go 5 blocks wide, and I'm gonna build this weird kind of platform over here, coming all the way out, making sure that there is a 3 by 3 area inside here. Then obviously, you know, also I'm going to be extending it all the way out to here, and I'll be texturing it a little bit with calcite. Now that's quite important because this is going to be a little bit of like an extra addition to the roof, a little bit of like an extra roof frame type thing, which isn't going to be too difficult to build. Basically what we're trying to use is just use a generic stair pattern with a classic slab on top, and then we want to just come and fill all of this space in as well, and maybe break this all the way through just to add a little bit more shape to this window section. Obviously we can't forget the spruce fences all around like that, but then I'm actually thinking about increasing or just upping that by 1 block. I think that looks pretty nice, and then I can just frame this all with glass panes. Now I'm wondering how it would look if I were to put a few grass blocks here and then just kind of cover that up with trapdoors. I kind of want to make a bit of a planter. It definitely looks nice. I'm wondering if I need to move this in by 1 block. I think what I could try to do here is maybe place a stair like this. I don't know if that's going to work. Definitely looks a little bit weird, but I think I actually kind of like it. But what I'm going to do is I'm still going to add a little bit of like short grass and a poppy in there. Now that looks nice and cozy. I'm definitely not repeating this on the other side. No, 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 my friend. However, on the other side, what we're going to be doing is I need to find the right area to start this. I would very much love to make a little bit of a tower. I think I'm going to start 2 blocks from there. And I'm gonna go, okay, change of plans. I'm starting 3 blocks from there, and I'm breaking a 2-block gap like that, and then I'll be breaking a 2-block gap down like this, and 2 blocks here. I realize that probably looks a little bit weird, but it's going to make sense very soon. Now I'm just going to break all of these blocks in between there, because this is going to allow me to add a small little thing coming out of it like that. And if I extend it all the way up, it'll look something like that. Definitely a little bit wonky, but don't worry, we're going to be doing a bit more work on it. First things first, we're going to be adding a little bit of calcite for texture. That's definitely made it feel a little bit better. And honestly, suddenly, like when I look at it from down here, I realize because of the height of the build, it is actually in proportion. Initially, I thought it's maybe a little bit too thin for how tall it is, but it seems pretty nice. And you know what? To make the roof look a little bit different, what we could do here is just almost make it look like there's an area that's sticking out a bit like that. And we could maybe add a slab down here and over there, maybe one more over here and there. Yeah, I kind of like that. Also, another option we could do is just add in a few walls along the bottom just to make it look like it's going a little bit in. I'm not sure how I feel about that though. definitely around the bottom here is seemingly doing some work. I quite like that. It also feels like it's just kind of breaking out and going up. However, the real money shot is going to be from somewhere here, and that seems to be pretty cool. But you know what? Now I've got my handy dandy spruce blocks ready to add a little bit of detail to this thing. How am I going to do that? I have absolutely no idea. I'm thinking a frame around this area over here would probably work nicely. Yes, it definitely needed that. I could then come up here and add a few spruce fences in the corners perhaps. Yep, definitely off to a decent start. I could follow that up by connecting these fences with a few spruce slabs. Yep, I like the look of that. We could maybe extend each part out with a few trapdoors like so. And then I'm thinking maybe we could place a block in here to give it that extra step up. And now I'm wondering if we could do something like this over here just to make it look as though I'm gonna need to redo this. I'm thinking 2 blocks there, a few slabs all around here just to give it that step. That definitely is starting to look a little bit better. We can add a block on top of some of those. Ooh, yeah, then we can add stairs over here. We definitely do that. That's what it was missing. Then blocks on top of here with a few stairs perhaps and some slabs. A block there, a spruce fence up there. Okay, we actually have a successful tower top. Doesn't that look nice? And you know what, from the other side it does look a little bit straight, but it's alright. I am however trying to think of how we could add a little bit more like visual interest to this area through details, and I'm thinking just scattering a few trapdoors all around will probably do a decent job. And then obviously, how could we forget, we have the spruce signs which we could maybe add around this area. That kind of makes it look like there's a little bit of a railing. I'm not sure how the floating ones there will look. There, you know what, I'm actually going to go with the floating spruce signs here. It gives it that little bit of a railing effect. Furthermore, what we could do at the top here is just add a floor in, and then we can also hang a lantern. I realize this is probably going to trigger some people's anxiety by hanging it on the trapdoors, but I think the trapdoors are going to be the best place to hang it. That actually looks really nice now. Now we just need to figure out how we're going to detail the rest of this tower, but you know what, it's actually kind of working. I think these need to be upside down though for it to work properly. And hold on, let me give it a 3-block gap from the top. Now how does that look? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look bad. We'll definitely need to add a few more details in, maybe like spruce fences in the corners. It's adding a little bit more reinforcement. Then we could just maybe add like an extra spruce slab in here and there. I do kind of like the look of that. When I'm working on a tower like this, I really do appreciate the little bit of a wonky look. And I think I'm going to add just one more ring around the bottom here. No, you know what? I don't even think that's necessary because this is where the reinforcement begins. What I'm going to try to do here is just give it a ring of spruce slabs in an awkward, weird configuration. And every here and there where I can, I'll be adding spruce fence gates, which I'll open. And I think the tower's actually done. From here, it actually looks quite nice, and I love the fact that it's offset. Hold on, I was wrong. There is one more thing we could potentially add to the tower to make it look a little bit cooler, and that's just a few leaves kind of dangling down the side here. I feel I need to do this in a very sparing manner, and that might be the right balance. Now we can go back to the bottom here, and I think what I'm going to do is just add a few pieces of coarse dirt in here to add to the path look, which I like very much. And then because the dirt is coarse, you're probably going to need a few stone buttons for pebbles. And while you're at it, you might as well add in a few ferns as well. Yeah, that's pretty nice. All right, the next thing we can do down here to make it look a little bit more just, I guess, intriguing is add a few barrels. The nice thing about the barrels is they add that little bit of visual intrigue, but they also had a fair bit of use to the build. Also, it wouldn't be a bad idea to add a few like hay bales just scattered around here. I mean, it is giving me some farmhouse vibes. Furthermore, what we could do is also maybe just add like a little bit of a chest detail over here with a trapdoor and another lantern on top of that. And I quite like that, so I think I'm going to repeat it on this side as well. You know, it's another option. I could actually put another one of those shelf-like things over here with a flower pot and a torch flower in there, and that does look pretty nice. However, there's a key detail we're still missing in this house, and that's a mine. I am, however, hoping that that's going to be an easy fix, and the area I'm planning on building it is in this section over here, but we'll need to see if it actually works out. So the idea is I want to go down into the ground over here. Okay, and this water source is probably not required for here anymore. Yep, we don't need that there. And what's nice is this entire area, I could actually probably use this entire area for the mine. I'm just going to clear out an area like that. Then what I'll do is I'll replace all of these blocks with cobbled deep slate, and I'll kind of just start digging down like this. This area I can fill in with stairs. The walls I'll also be filling in with cobbled deep slate. I can replace this block with stairs, and essentially this part can go down as long as we need it to. However, now what we still need to do is build a little bit of a cozy roof for this place. So what I'm thinking about doing is having spruce slabs as a small little overhang type thing going on here. I would like to add a little bit of like a slope to it, so maybe something like this. I do want it to look like an addition, and that's nice. I'm loving that. However, it might look cool if there are like a few leaves just dangling down here as well. And then we'll obviously also have to hang a few lanterns inside here, and we could just add a item frame over here with a pickaxe just to signify that it is indeed the mine. And you know what, it might be a good idea just to extend the fence all the way so that we don't accidentally fall in from the outside. And just like that, we have a fairly cozy little mine entrance. I love it. It's also just occurred to me the perfect block to add some texture in here might actually be basalt. However, we can't use nether materials, so no basalt for us, which means I think we might actually just need to leave this bottom section like this. Unless now, for whatever reason, some polished deep slate might actually look nice. Hold on, suddenly I do actually like the polished deep slate. Yeah, I think I'm going to be going for the polished deep slate right now. This bottom area just felt like it needed something. Oh, you know what I think it's missing? This entire top area looks nice and detailed. I think it maybe needs just like a few trapdoors under these stairs. That brownness from the spruce kind of just needs to come down a little bit more. Yes, that was definitely it. That definitely added something. Now I'm wondering if we had a line of spruce signs here, how would that look? I actually don't know how I feel about that. I do feel it is a little bit better with it than without it. It kind of feels like it makes the whole structure supporting part a little bit more reinforced. So I guess now all that's left is to work on the interior. I won't bore you with the details, I'll just give you a little bit of an interior tour when I'm done. Alright, once again, what took a second for you felt like an eternity for me, but nonetheless, let's do an interior tour. So as you come in, you're gonna see there's a little bit of utility right in front of you here. On the left, we have a cozy little bedroom. You can just come over here and set your respawn point. And on the right, you have a beautiful display of storage. Now, if you have a look behind you, there's a tower of scaffolding here, which you can just climb up. And that takes you to the second level, where there's a maximum enchanting table. Obviously, a little bit more storage. It's always useful to just have this scattered about your base. And then just a cozy little desk for a little bit of detail. Moving on, if you go up this tower of scaffolding, you get to the attic. Now, what I was thinking up here, if you have a few friends over, you could have them sleep over here. And I mean, if you really wanted to, they could even set their respawn points in here. They have this nice window to look out of. Pretty nice view. And there's space for, I don't know, I guess you could have a crafting bench here, but a little bit of storage for each one as well. But with all of that being said, that, my friends, is the mid house. Yeah, buddy, it's time to move on to the ultimate house. I'm incredibly excited for this one. As you can see, we're going to be building it on a little bit of an island here. And in all honesty, this thing's going to be huge. It's going to be incredibly detailed, and it's just going to be a great time. But with all of that being said, there is now absolutely zero limitations in this build. However, we do have to include all of the previous things and add a portal, brewing, and villagers. So without further ado, I think I'm going to start clearing out an area here to build on. And you know what? Because this one's so special, I think I'm actually going to do a little bit of landscaping as well. It definitely wasn't a lot of landscaping. I just wanted to add a little bit of like a smooth edge over here, and now I also removed all the podsols, so we have a pretty nice area to build on. Okay, you know what, I think we're going to start with the front of the house here, and I'm going to start it around about in this corner, and I'm going to go 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Then I'm going to come back to the front here and say 2 3 4 5 6 7, and then I'm going to bring this all the way back to this one, and now I'm going to go another 2 3 4 5 6 7, and then I'm going to extend this part all the way to line up with here, and I'm just going to repeat this until we have a cool funky shape that looks like that. No, wait, hold on. Change of plans. We're going to break this through here. Yeah, that's the kind of shape we want. And I don't know if you've picked up on the pattern yet, but we're going 7 blocks across at each end point. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then basically the name of the game is just connecting these points up together. Now we have this cool L shape, and it's fairly large. We have a total of 5 by 5 blocks of space inside, which is going to be more than enough for a huge interior. I am, however, starting to think I need to clear a few more trees away quick. Now, with all those trees cleared away, I'm going to get back to the house, and I'm going to be building the wall out of stone stone brick initially. It really is a big owl. Don't worry, we're taking nothing but W's today. Now all I need to do is replace this grass with spruce planks. And now we're left with a very nice foundation for the house. You know what, looking at this now, it does seem very long. I think we can make these portions go out by like another 2 blocks. Basically, I'm just thinking about doing something kind of like this. I don't know if you can picture that, but that all the way around. Okay, that's looking a lot better. I don't know if you can tell already, but based on, well, the base of this house, this is going to be a big boy. Now all I need to do is raise this wall up by about, initially I was thinking 7 blocks, but I might just take it up to 9. But you know what, I think I'm going to start with 7, which then looks something like this. This actually looks a little bit like, for the scale that we're going for here, if you really look at the size of the base, this feels a little bit short. I think I'm going to make it 2 blocks taller. Just like that. Okay, those 2 blocks actually make a pretty big difference here. Now this is going to be a fairly big build and a fairly detailed build, so I don't want to go too far like over the edge with the texturing. So I'm just going to keep it simple by adding a little bit of stone into the walls here. And I really actually love the look of that. I'm just going to repeat that on all the walls now. Alrighty, and when it's done, it looks something like this. You know what, it's very subtle, but I think I like it quite a lot. I'm happy with that job, so I think I've earned myself a bathroom break. Whew. Okay, let's go. Now I think just like in the previous houses, the first step I'm going to do here is fill in this floor and get started on the second level. That way I kind of have an idea of how this bottom part's going to look, which means we can come back and detail that a bit later. However, I am starting to pick up on a little bit of an issue we may have here. Usually when I plan these builds out, or at least try to get the shape, I try to think about where I kind of want what to go, and it's just occurring to me, it really feels like I'm missing a section on the right here. It feels like I actually need to go and add this part all the way over here. I'll be right back. Alright, so basically I just decided to extend this part over here. I didn't want to build this piece out because I remember what I actually want to have over here is a staircase. So I'm just kind of going to leave this open for now until we get to that point. But with that being said, how about we start working on the little spruce trim around the walls? And if you can remember that correctly, basically we just start with a upside down stair over there, a slab, and then a stair, and then we just connect it all together with slabs, and at each corner we just repeat that thing all the way through. However, there is one more thing I do want to keep in mind real quick, and that is the fact that I don't want this to go all the way to the edge here. I actually want the second level to kind of stop somewhere around here, but I need to make sure that it's a relatively odd number, and if I'm not mistaken, this number is 9 blocks from there. So I think that's where we're going to be stopping with this part. That's going to leave more than enough space for us to include a staircase going up there. It's just dawned upon me, this is going to be a pretty big staircase. However, it's also occurring to me that we're going to need a few more columns over here. Now on this side, unfortunately, we do have a bit of an odd number until here, which is 18, but that means 17 is over here. However, if we just run with it and give a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 block gap in between the columns, then it should still look pretty good. It's going to look pretty weird here because here there's only going to be a 4 block gap instead of the usual 5, but hey, I mean, it doesn't have to be symmetrical, so it can probably still look pretty cool like that. Now on this side, I think I'm going to go straight smack bang in the middle, and I'm going to start with a stair there. And for these portions, I think I am only going to go with a 1 central column over here. However, in this one side portion, which we're not going to have over here because, well, we're stopping the wall there, I'm going to add a column in the middle. And I just realized I didn't mention it earlier, but I plan on placing a column on top of each stair except for the corners. In the corners, they're going to be placed on top of the slabs. It is, however, occurring to me that we may still need a column right in the middle here just to make it look a little bit more supported. But you know what, instead of unintentionally confusing you, I think I'm just going to build the columns into place and then I'll show you how they look afterwards. Now, it's important to keep in note this bottom foundation part was 9 blocks high, and I'd like to make the middle floor a little bit higher. So I think I'll be increasing the middle floor's columns up to about 9 blocks high. That looks pretty good for the house. Keep in mind, there's still going to be a roof going over the top. And now with all the columns built in and textured, this is more or less how it's going to look. With the columns in place, what that now means is that we can get started on the wall that goes inside here. Now, I think I'm going to repeat that similar wall from earlier with the diorite and the calcite, but I think I might also work a little bit of wool in just to get the gradient going a little bit lighter. What I think I might also try here is to use the diorite at the bottom and then use the calcite in the middle and then the wool at the top. That's the plan at least, but let's see how it goes. Which looks like that when it's done. I think it's actually a pretty nice gradient going upward. I realize it looks a little bit weird right now, but just keep in mind we're going to be adding windows and details. And on a side note, with all this wood and wool, you might not want to come close to here with a flint and steel. But just as we did earlier, the next thing I'm going to do is just quickly fill this level in with spruce planks. Now, as you can see, I'm on the ground level here. This project is pretty big. So before I commit to doing any of the detailing in the walls, I kind of want to get the biggest parts of the house's body built, so that if anything does need a change, I can do it a lot easier than well, if it was just full of details. So with that being said, I think it's time to build the roof, and the frames are going to come over here. I'd like to go for another nice high tall frame design, and I'm planning on having another one over here. And similar to the previous roof frame, I'm going to go with a similar design because I just really love it and I think it looks really nice. However, as you can see, it's going to be a little bit taller than the previous one as well, just because this entire section is a little bit wider. And with the entire structure of the frame kind of built, that's more or less how it's going to look. If we have a peek at it from the bottom here, it's pretty big, but honestly, I feel like it could be even bigger. But nope, now it's just looking too big. I think what we can do is we can still go with a 4-block high, then we can do 3, and then we can do 2. Yeah, that's definitely it. It definitely needed to be a little bit taller. And then obviously the next step is building the central column all the way up to the tippy top here, texturing it with some spruce planks, and then filling this back section over here behind the spruce column with calcite and white wool, which should look something like that, which I like very much. And then as you know, we're going to come in here with the spruce stair and the spruce trap doors to give it a nice arch, spruce trap door in the middle, a few signs connecting at the top here just to add a little bit more detail to the roof, and then we can just kind of start alternating spruce signs up like this, which definitely makes this part look a little bit more detailed. However, we can't forget to add the spruce fence gates at the bottom of the blocks just to make it look like the frame is actually connected to itself. And if you don't mind me, I'm going to build this frame on this side as well, which when it's done should look something like that. However, I did forget something at the top here. We need to build this top of the roof part that's going to connect everything together as well. Grindstone underneath with a lantern hanging from there just to add a little bit of subtle lighting, and I must say that do be looking mighty fine. Also, as I zoom out like this, I'm just starting to realize the absolute scale of this gigantic build. Now, because this is the ultimate house, I do want to go above and beyond on this roof. So I'm going to go for some kind of a crazy color scheme here, but just give me a shot. I'm sure it's going to come up nice. Well, let's be honest, I can never really guarantee anything, but I'm hopeful. Okay, young grasshopper, this is the color scheme I'm going to be going with. So we're going to start by giving it a frame with dark oak slabs, and then we're going to hit it with some mangrove planks and mangrove stairs over here. And you know what, since this is quite a tall roof, I think I'm going to go with a level of like a base level of 3 mangrove, and then I'm going to start working in the crimson. Now I'm just going with solid lines right now. I'll scatter it throughout a little bit later to just make it like blend together better, but I'm thinking I'm still going to need to go quite a bit higher before I get to the blue terracotta. And now as we start with this next section, now we can start working into the blue terracotta. And with that in place, that is how it looks. Now, I get it, it looks a bit funky, but as you know, just like we did with these levels over here, once we start texturing them into each other, it's going to look a little bit better. So what I think I'm going to start doing is just moving a few of these mangrove logs kind of throughout here, just like this. And then I can start just lightly sprinkling in a few crimson logs between here as well. I'm also realizing I'm going to need some crimson stairs, which I can kind of just sprinkle in like this. See, and that's already starting to blend nicely. When you look at that from far, it doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look particularly jarring on the eyes, at least. Now I just need to make sure that I do enough of that in this top part. And you know, because this top part is like 1 block in, I think I'm actually going to allow myself to go a little bit heavier on the crimson here. And I might even allow it to scatter all the way through to the top there, just lightly. I'm not sure yet, but I also need to move a little bit of the blue terracotta down. Now this blue terracotta part feels like the part that really starts becoming a little bit more difficult. But once again, if we look at it from here, it definitely does look a bit better. My concern, however, is that there's a little bit too much blue terracotta. So I think I'm just going to go a little bit more aggressively with the crimson at the top here. I realize it looks a little bit chaotic right now, but I suppose that's part of the whole process. And I'm already starting to love that a lot more. Now, there are various other things we can still do and are still going to do to make it look a little bit more interesting, like adding the occasional crimson stair over here, just to give it a little bit of like varying heights all around. I could even do it over here. I don't know if it's coming through, but I'm trying to make this as random and kind of messy as possible. I just want it to be a fun roof. So there is one more thing I can do here and that I am going to do. I just quickly want to get started on, well, actually just want to finish this section quick. Yeah, now you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that this part doesn't look particularly great. But not to worry, we have a plan. And you know what? I wanted to just connect this part together, but before I can do that, I think it's time to execute on our plan. Basically, part of that whole game plan is I want to see if I can add a few like different color bits and bobs all around here just to make the roof look a little bit roughened out. It's like when you look at this from far, it actually, that messiness actually blends together kind of nicely. Yeah, I mean, we can even get crazy with it. We can add like a stair over there. And then, I mean, if we just go around, slap a few trapdoors in here, suddenly the roof does start looking a lot more interesting, and it also starts adding a little bit of like a a finer taper up to the top. Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just having fun. And with my art project complete on the back part, now we can start working on the tower. I just need to be smart about how I do this. I really don't mind it being in the center. In fact, that might actually be ideal. So let me just start breaking out from the center. Okay, right now we've got like a 2x2 area here. Or no, we've actually got a 3x3 area going here. So if we break this out, we can see we've got like 3x3. However, it might be cool to have like a 1 over there. Would that be the right place? Hold on, no. So what I'm thinking is kind of out like this. In order for my plan to work, that would have to be like that. And then this would have to be over here. Because now I can have a 3x1x3 tower, which is fairly wide. But that kind of width is going to be important if we want this tower to also go high. Now, if I line myself up with here and drop down, that takes me down to this block, which is fantastic because that's still going to line up with some point of the roof before it gets to the edge. So now all I really need to do is break all of these exposed parts out and just repeat the foundation of that shape on the floor. Well, I guess the floor of the attic, if you want to call it that. And then I'll be repeating the exact same process from earlier. I'm going to start at the bottom with diorite just to give it that nice, solid, strong, foundational kind of look. And then as we head up the tower, we can allow it to look a little bit lighter with the calcite and the wool. So now the question we actually need to be asking ourselves is how high do we want the tower to go? And I think it can still go quite a bit taller than what it currently is. I do, however, need to keep in mind that I'm going to be building a tower top on top of it as well. So you know what? I think right here I'm going to add maybe like another 3 layers of wool. Something like that. You know what? I'm going to add 1 more layer of wool. I'm going to make it 4 layers of wool up here. And then I'm just quickly going to work on texturing it into the tower a little bit. And now if we look at it from the outside, we can see a much nicer detailed tower section, which when you look at it from far like this, really looks quite nice. But with all of that being said, before we build the top of this tower now, I think I need to build these parts that connect the roof together. Thankfully, that's quite a simple thing to do. All we need to do is extend the logs all the way to the end over here, grab a few trapdoors. I'm going to give a 3 block gap in between each space there, and then that should allow me to come very close to here, which I can then kind of make look nice with a stair over there just to make it look even more supported. And you already know we're repeating it on the other side as well. Now I just grab a few spruce signs and line this entire part up with spruce signs. Now that I have my handy dandy spruce blocks ready to go, I think I'm going to start at the top of the tower with a few upside down spruce stairs. I mean, just like we did in the last one, but that looks very solid and I really like the way it's looking. And I think if we put 3 spruce fences on each side like this, we can yet again give ourselves a little bit of like a lookout point on this tower, which could look pretty nice. Now I can hopefully just connect them all together with a few slabs, and I'm really hoping that came out nice. It definitely looks quite nice. Now I think what I'm going to do here is just fill this level up with spruce blocks. That's going to give us a bit of a foundation to work from when we want to build this whole tower part. But I am starting to realize that maybe I should use mangrove planks for that part. Yeah, that's the way it needs to be, because the mangrove starts adding that red color. By the way, does that not look nice? Wow, that red with the brown and the white really looks nice. Okay, but with all of that being said, I think we're going to start here with like a few mangrove planks in the sides, and then it might be a good idea to just add mangrove stairs next to those planks with mangrove flags in the corners. Okay, that's a fairly solid start to the tower roof. Man, I'm telling you, these tower roofs can be some of the most tricky ones to build. However, if we follow a similar pattern, maybe we can like put crimson stairs in there, and then we need to get crimson fences because we can probably put those over here just to make it look like it's tapering in a bit more. And if we take a gander at this from far, that's starting to look very nice. Definitely want to bring this up a little bit higher with a crimson. I don't even know if I want to bring the blue terracotta into this. Part of me really just wants to finish it off with crimson. I think I'm going to try to finish this off with crimson. Then we can just put a stick on top of there. And now that actually looks very neat and organized, but I love that roof frame. I'm not even joking when I say this. This might actually be the best tower roof that I've ever built. Now, if we wanted to be fancy with this, we could add maybe like 1 more stick on top. Nah, let's add 2 more sticks on top. And now we're going to start getting really fancy with this. So I'd love to build a bit of a flag up here. And I'm going to start it out with some purple wool, which I'm just kind of going to bring across like this. I think I'm going to build the entire thing now just out of like purple purple wool. And then I'll try to texture the other colors in a little bit later, but I have no idea if this is actually working. This flag might actually end up being the most difficult part of the build. Yeah, I mean, that's already becoming a little bit big, and that's probably tapering away perfectly like that. I mean, I kind of like that because it looks like it's got a bit of an updraft as it gets higher. So now I think I'm going to move in a little bit of magenta wool, and then I want to finish it off with pink wool. Genuinely no idea how that's going to look, but it's not looking too bad. That actually looks pretty nice, but it feels like the bottom of the flag needs to maybe be a little bit longer, just like that. Now the flag's connected to here, so that's not an option. Maybe we can make each part a little bit higher. I don't really know if that's an option here, but we're going to try it. Let's see, maybe that's the fix it needed. You know what, that was the fix it needed. However, I don't think I'm going to go with a pink. I think I'm just going to use purple and magenta. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely looking nice. If I'm running on the floor here and I see that, I'm not going to be upset. I think I'm actually quite happy with that. Okay, so finally, the biggest body part of the build is done. That means we can now start working on all the other actual important stuff. Okay, one lunch break later, and I'm feeling energized and ready to go to build all of the details we need to add to really tie this thing together. The first thing we're going to be starting with is going to be a portal. Now this is going to be a big boy, and I've got a very difficult challenge here that I'm going to try to pull off, and I really have no guarantee of whether or not I'll be able to do it. As you can see, it's a fairly large area that we're going to have to be detailing. Now if I were to use like wood and stuff to detail this, it probably wouldn't work out that well. So what I actually want to do here is make it look like a cave type thing. I want to see if I can build up a rock structure all around here, see if I can maybe have a little bit of an overhang over here, and also maybe kind of cut in the corners here a little bit. Then obviously you're just gonna have that beautiful purple sticking out on the side there, and then I would love to also build a staircase over here that kind of wraps around and curls around, but that's some pretty complex stuff and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull it off, so we'll just have to see. That's a decent start for a rock. Like, what do I do now? I think that's not a bad start. Now we're gonna need to build another one on top here. Ooh, I could also scatter in a few tough walls here just to make it look a little bit more random. Maybe we can add a few walls around here. It's kind of cool. If you take a look at it from here, it's definitely added something to the build that's very odd, very peculiar. Now what I'm thinking, we could kind of connect that like that, and then this is going to make sense. This is going to make sense very soon, but it could be cool if we have a few rocks just scattered like this. Now picture that you're going to have to like jump in between these rocks, because what we could do to follow this up now is we could dig a little bit of a hole over here, and we could actually connect this to this little, well, I guess that's not little, that's an ocean, isn't it? Then we could try to just move this thing a little bit into here and see if there's any kind of a way that we can make this look somewhat natural. Something like that, and then we just need to break this all out. Then all of those lower blocks we can replace with mossy cobblestone, because obviously there's going to be water touching all of those. Then we just fill this area in with water, and that, my friends, is going to be the Pedernautal area. However, what we need to still do in here is just make it look a little bit more natural, so we can add a little bit of depth to this pond. Ooh, could actually go fishing in here perhaps. And then it'll probably be nice to just add a few of these patches of clay in here, and you know what, we can put a patch of gravel in this side just to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then all we need to do from here on out is spam bone meal all around here. Something like that's really pretty. And then why not have a few leaves grow up here? Let's use azalea leaves instead, because they just kind of look green no matter what. So for now, I think we're done on the portal. I think that looks pretty cool. The house is actually coming together pretty nicely. Look at this. Now, as I stated earlier, the next thing I want to work on is a staircase. And I'm thinking about bringing the staircase kind of like to here, because that just kind of makes sense. But now I'm thinking about getting the general shape of the staircase, which I would like, and then we can figure out all the rest of the details after that. So I'm just going to start with spruce planks here. Okay, not going to lie, this is looking like one of the most dangerous staircases. It looks a bit weird being spruce, but when I change this to rock, I think it could actually look really cool. I do think the path looks a little bit skinny, but maybe that's good. Maybe we can extend this whole pond inwards. I like that idea. Let's do that. Yep, I'm starting to like the look of that, but we do need to do a few more adjustments to the staircase now. And then we're left with a very cool looking staircase. Unfortunately, it's probably going to blend in quite a lot with the build because of all the stone, but it is what it is. But anyway, that's the staircase complete. Probably a little bit skinny. However, if we take a look at it from far, it definitely is noticeable. And you know what? If we actually try to use it, it's definitely usable as well, which is, well, that's always useful. Now, we do have another problem here, and that is the fact that we broke the ground here that the stepping stones were leading to. But not a problem, because with a few blocks fixed, we have the stepping stones back. Okay, it really feels like that's brought everything together nicely. Now, I suppose to make it a little bit less intimidating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by detailing these top walls, and then I'll figure out something around these bottom ones. And I'm going to get started by just adding a few of those classic frames in here. I feel like it's always a decent place to begin at. Rounds it out nicely. Okay, all I'm thinking about doing here is making windows, which can be like 3 blocks high. Then just the classic things. We can just add a few stairs under the windows, add the oak trapdoors to make it look like we have some window shutters over here to open and close the windows. And then the classic campfires just to give it a little bit of a roof on top. Then we could add a few lanterns over here, a flower pot with a torch flower in as well. And now I don't think that looks too bad. And we can use similar details on this side to the ones that we used over there. That's already making that entire section look a lot better. Now this part's going to be cool because this is actually the entrance to the entire house from the top here. Now this does look a little bit weird and off center here, but I don't mind it too much because we can still hang a lantern from the middle campfire, and then that gives us something like this, which actually feels kind of cozy to me. And oh wow, look at how huge this interior space is. But nonetheless, I've got a few more walls to decorate, so I'm just going to do that and then I'll get back to you when I'm done. And just like that, what was a second for you was a couple of minutes for me, but nonetheless, I got a few more details done in the back here. They're nothing too crazy, but they definitely do fill the wall up a little bit and make it a little bit more special than, well, just a blank wall. Now, one thing I do still want to do around the bottom area, I mean, there's still a lot of details we're gonna have to add here, but I loved this kind of rock design, which seemed to have been working quite nicely. For this to make sense, I'm gonna have to kind of repeat it all around the base here. I mean, if it's like just randomly in these sections, it's not really gonna make sense. So let me quickly build a few rocks and then I'll get back to you once I'm done with them. And just like that, a whole bunch of more rocks have been built all around here. I realize it still looks a little bit like empty or bland, but I think I've got a plan for here that's actually gonna work. We're just gonna have to wait a while before we can implement it. The next thing we need to do is actually work on this area right here. Now, I kind of like what we've got going on here because there's like this gigantic rock here. The reason that's a good thing is because this is going to be the entrance to our mine. So I'm just going to rip this floor out and I guess start by adding a few stairs over here. And just like that, we've got ourselves a funky, kind of spooky little cave entrance. If you're building this in your own world, then you can do with that whatever you please. This is fine for me. Now, this area outside needs to look like, well, there's a mine there. It also needs to look a little bit inhabited. So what I'm going to be doing is replacing this dirt at the top here in like a path type shape with coarse dirt. And the idea is that I kind of want to bring this dirt path all the way through here if possible and connect it up to there as well. And just like that, the path has been done as well. Now let me give you a quick tour. So I created this path with a little bit of like a bend as well, going all around connecting to the stepping stones. I just realized I somehow managed to miss connecting it to the actual main staircase. I'm gonna have to fix that. Anyway, it connects up and then goes to this portion, which I mean, I guess we could imagine there's like a dock there. Anyway, I used rooted dirt in the middle of this path section to make the, I guess the like center of the path look like it's been walked a little bit more. And then I also included a few stone buttons for some pebbles, and I included a few hay bales and barrels all around here for some extra details as well. Now, if you're thinking that this looks pretty cool, I'd agree with you. However, I do see there's another flaw in this whole project. We don't have any way of actually getting into the ground level of this house at all. So what I'm thinking is we could maybe break a hole right here in the middle at this section that's kind of been left nice and open, and we could include a few stairs over here with a few more stairs over here, and we could come inside and slap down a whole bunch of trapdoors, break the 2 middle ones and place a door in here, and wham bam, we have an entrance. Now, in order for us to make it usable, we can add a lantern there just so that we can actually see where we're going, and then we could just use tough blocks to make more of those stepping stones leading out to the front part, which when it's complete looks something like this, and it's quite fun to use. I guess what this now means is that we can do the last part of this outside area, and that's basically going to be to incorporate the farm into this build. As you can see, there's no real dedicated farm space, and that's because the farm is just going to be all around it. We're just going to have a nice big wheat field here, which should look something like this when it's done. So as you can see, I also included a rose bush area over here, and then I planted in this wheat in between all the grass. I thought it would be cool to almost have these pieces of grass look like weeds growing up throughout the wheat. And now I'm wondering if this is going to work, but I'm thinking if we can kind of add in a few iron bars in between the walls here and there just to add a little bit more like depth and detail. I do like that quite a bit. It's giving your eyes on this bottom section here something else to look at. So let me get this interior built and I'll get back to you with the tour later. Ladies and gentlemen, the interior has been completed. You know what that means. Let me give you a tour of the ultimate survival survival house. As we walk through this partially bending path, we can hop on the stepping stones, which give us a little bit of a path to the portal over the small water pond we have. Now heading back over the stepping stones, we can connect back to this path. If we continue on past the rose bushes on the left here, it will take us through to the mine area. As you can see, there's the potential for a huge staircase going all the way down. Now if we head right from this path onto a few more stepping stones, we'll be able to get to the bottom level of the house. Once you enter, you'll see that there is a maxed out enchanting area all the way on the left, a cute little desk just for the fun of it, and then a huge brewing zone over here as well. But moving through the house, we've also got a nice little bedroom with a few other necessities, and then a bulk storage area as well. Now if you were to come over to the enchanting area and go up the scaffolding, that would take you up to the second level. However, I feel like taking a different route. Heading back over the stepping stones and connecting back to the path, we could walk through this rose area and start walking up this beautifully bending staircase, taking us all the way up to the second level. As you can see, this is where the rock feature is for the portal down there. However, if we come through this doorway, I've included a few chests here, which is where you can store your emeralds. Once you get in here, you'll see another cute little desk. This is the workstation for all the villagers. And now when we go inside here, you can see a few stonemasons, farmers, fletchers and cartographers. These villages will be for farming your emeralds or for getting some XP. I've also included a few other villages to farm some diamond gear from. Now guess what, if you head up the scaffolding, you'll get to the second level of the villager trading hall. All of these villagers are just librarians, all for your OP enchanted books. I've also themed the room with a few bookshelves at the top there. But that's not it, there's more. If you continue up the scaffolding to get into the attic and then go up this scaffolding to get up to the tower, you'll be able to see this beautiful lookout point over all the land. And if you're brave enough, you can also jump down here and try to hit the water. Now if you'd like to download these worlds and play in them, you can get that all from my Patreon. You'll also get access to over 100 other worlds included. And that entire package, everything included, all for only $5. But thanks for watching my build challenge, and I hope to see you in the next one. And always remember, Jesus loves you.